All right, everyone, welcome back into another MLB Props video. In this video, we're going to be breaking down some of the best free ways to go about researching the MLB slate to find the best prop bets on PrizePicks and Underdog. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. And this first one is actually going to end up being more of a hack, if you will, to like kind of hack PrizePicks with the prop bets that we are getting. And so I just want to call out the lines that we are getting for them. So we have two prop bets that are considered goblins. Okay. Most of you guys know what goblins are in terms of prop bets, but I want to just go ahead and kind of backtrack and really talk about really why goblins happen and what they are, because there's one bet on this board right now that is by far a great bet for us to be targeting, and some people might not even realize it. So we're going to go ahead and touch on that by covering the goblin prop bets. And if we just go ahead and take a peek at the two prop bets that we're getting as goblin prop bets, what are we going to notice here? They have a 65% likelihood for both of those to end up hitting. Okay, just right there. That is why they're goblin prop bets. Okay, because they're highly likely to hit. That's why they're not going to be a standard prop bet. Now, for those of you that do not know how to properly bet on PrizePicks or Underdog, let's just go ahead and do that. I've done a bunch of videos on this already, but let's just go ahead and reiterate, because if we just go ahead and take a peek at the popular board right now, a lot of the good bets that we have on paper, a lot of the bets that we should be going out of the way to target are not on the popular board. So that tells me enough people do not really know, or maybe they're too lazy to. I don't know, but I just want to reiterate this again for people that maybe are new to PrizePicks prop betting and Underdog prop betting, or maybe are not being successful, about the strategy behind and really the purpose behind playing on PrizePicks and Underdog. So this is called expected value betting, where you are gaining an edge on PrizePicks or Underdog in the long term. Okay, and it's going to be based off of really 6 slip bets or 5 slip bets that are minus 118 or on average per Vegas lines, without VIG, without juice associated to them. Bets that have a 54% likelihood to hit per the Vegas odds that we were getting on average are bets that give us a profitable approach in the long term. Okay, and we can kind of look at that. So look at these. These have a 54% edge, or win rate, if you will, likelihood to hit. And once we get to over 54%, guys, that's where our ROI ends up being in the positive. Okay, so that is why we are trying to attack those bets that are likely to hit in the long term. Those bets are over 54% likelihood to hit in the long term. That is why that's kind of the magic number there. Okay, and if you guys are more interested in this, obviously you guys can pause the video and take a peek at that. But again, I think in 2025, most people get this concept. It's just whether or not they want to implement that strategy, or maybe they're just too lazy. I don't exactly know. But let's go ahead and get into Anthony Volpe here, where again, his hits and his total bases are two goblin prop bets, because again, they wouldn't be standard bets because they're highly likely to hit. Okay, now what bet is probably standing out to you guys? I think most people that are maybe familiar with the channel know which one I'm talking about. It's this prop bet here for him to get over 3 for a fantasy score. Why? Well, let's look at the scoring chart for PrizePicks, and really what we're looking at is going to be this range here for fantasy scores. So if he gets a single, that's 3 right there. Okay, so if he gets a hit, he's already at 3 for a fantasy score. And again, per Vegas odds, he has a 65% likelihood to get a hit. So that bet right there already has a 65% likelihood to end up being a push. And so just right there, we are seeing that that's a very good bet. Now, this isn't the only bet on the day that we have right now for this. The reason I was able to stumble upon this hack right here is by, and I'm not trying to sell this, guys, this is truly just like a free tips and tricks video, but like this is how I like found out about kind of this hack. I was looking through it. I'm like, we're getting a bunch of these fantasy score prop bets where they're all at 3, and they all have a high percent likelihood to end up hitting, like this edge right here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 that have an over 54% likelihood to hit. And now some of them will end up being pushes, some of them will end up missing. But the fact that we're getting these, and let's just go through them all. Let's just double check that all of these are goblin prop bets. Okay, so here we go, guys. He has 3 goblins, total bases, singles, hits. So all that correlates with him at least getting a push. And then if he does one other thing, he's going to end up getting the over. So a walk, a stolen base, ends up scoring a run, gets an RBI, like anything else. And we're staying pretty, or he gets a double or something like that. So that one's there. We look at DJ as well. Goblin for total bases and hits. Great there. We look at Class. Again, exact same thing. 3 goblins there. His hits, runs, RBIs at 0.5. So that's where we could maybe get into a little bit of a conundrum, okay, in the fact that maybe he ends up getting a run, actually a run would be fine because he's going to get on base regardless, and if he scores a run, that's great. It'd be the RBI, because the RBI is only worth 2 points. So that'd be the one concern there, is if this Goblin prop ends up hitting, and it only ends up hitting because he gets a run. Anyways, still a clear edge. And if we go down this list, guys, all of them are going to be the exact same situation. So if you guys are someone that is not paying for something like 9 to 5, which is perfectly fine. Again, that's not what this video is about. You guys can do, it's going to take a little bit more finagling on your part. Obviously, you kind of have to go through the players, but maybe just look at hitting fantasy score like this, and then just scroll through it and see which players have 3 for their hitting fantasy score, and then go ahead and take a peek at those players to see if they have any Goblin prop bets associated with them. So I'm actually curious here. This player right here, let's see what he looks like. So yeah, he's popping up as a guy that has a lot of Goblins as well. So like, again, that's kind of just another simple approach to that. Now, another thing that I actually like to do as well is go to rotowire.com and look at their BVP matchup. Okay, now this is something that I do like to also attach to bets that we're being told to bet the overs with. But if you guys are someone that bets more on maybe more traditional sites, you can use this as well. So this is a free resource on rotowire.com, and they allow you to take a peek at the matchups that a batter has against a specific pitcher that they're facing against, whether it's a hot or cold matchup for them. If there's a hot pitching matchup or a cold pitching matchup, that'll be listed here as well. And so, for instance, let's just go through this. So we got Kyle Schwarber going against Cal Cantrell. Now, his batting average is terrible. Okay, right? That's what this is calling out, but he has 3 home runs in this one. So maybe you're someone that wants to place a home run bet. Maybe not a terrible idea, but he also has 7 strikeouts. So maybe you're chasing some strikeout bets there as well with that. It's kind of a way of looking at that. David Peterson. So we're looking at him, guys. There's a chance that maybe he struggles in this game because Matt Olson, Austin Riley, and Acuna are all batting pretty well against him. Now, for me personally, what I like to do is I used to look at batters that have had, a decent amount of at-bats, and really their batting average is solid. The power is great to see. Like for Jose Altuve against JP Sears, like this is pretty awesome. 22 at-bats, big enough sample size. He has 9 hits, 2 home runs, 5 RBIs, 1 base on ball, 2 strikeouts, and almost over 400 average. That is pretty darn awesome there. And so yes, if we could find good bets to potentially go with for Jose Altuve, whether that be on PrizePicks or Underdog, or more standard bets, like you guys can go ahead and attack that way as well. And if you guys are someone that is betting on PrizePicks, maybe you'd want to look at the hitting fantasy score. I don't know if I exactly want to get there. Maybe a home run, but the point is, like, we can kind of look through that and see which players are presenting us the best matchups. Now, I will say that tool, using that tool, this is much better at the start of the day before PrizePicks and Underdog can kind of adjust their lines based off of the other books that are giving us MLB prop bets as well that day, because that's something that happens. They will turn bets where they're losing that long-term advantage. They will turn those into Goblins a little bit earlier on in the day. So the way I like to go about using kind of this tool as well is I'll go through it and see maybe which bets I'm on that day that are maybe correlated with what we're being told to do, or maybe the opposite. So let's start with a bet that's a decent example of that. So we got the catcher here going against Cal Cantrell. In 10 at-bats, he's only had 2 hits and 4 strikeouts. Okay, so obviously not doing well against him. Okay, not a lot of at-bats. Obviously would want a little bit more. Now, 200 average is not terrible, but for example purposes, let's just take a peek at it. And so I'm looking at him, guys. He is someone that if we're going through on the day and maybe we're seeing that he has a 53.75% likelihood to get over 5-4's PrizePicks hitting fantasy score. Maybe this is a tight board day. We're not getting that many prop bets, and maybe we're thinking about placing that bet. Now, to me, I'm looking at this bet here, guys, and I'm like, well, maybe because he actually does struggle against the batter versus pitcher matchup that we have here, maybe this is a bet that I just want to stay away from. It's a bet that I do not want to bet on today. That's a way that I go about kind of using, again, I'm not trying to sell this, but this is kind of how I go about using it to, place those successful bets each and every day. It's kind of just that triple verification, okay? Because we already have the underdog line, typically speaking, if it's there. We have the average sportsbook line. We have the projection data in there. But if we can also add in that BVP, I think it's pretty darn huge to do that. And then just lastly, let's get into just like the pitcher side of it. So here's another interesting spot for it. So cold pitcher matchup, Dane Kramer, okay, going against Tampa Bay. Now, this is another one where, if I'm doing my research throughout the day, I see Dean Kramer here, his fantasy score of 25.5 is maybe an interesting one. Okay, we look at the average sportsbook line, they would have it closer to about 27. The projection data about 26.83. Maybe again on a limited board day, I'm looking at this and maybe I want to get there. Now, this bet only has a 52% likelihood to hit, so we're probably not doing that. But again, just for example purposes, I can't create the board. I can't give myself an ideal situation, but there are times where this pops up where we're being told to bet like the under for a player, and also he struggles against that pitcher, or vice versa, where we're being told to bet the over on a player, and he does really well against that pitcher. Those are bets that I'm absolutely going out of my way to target. But again, this is something where maybe we're looking at it, maybe we're thinking about it because you look at the difference between the PrizePicks line and the average sportsbook line. It's enough to maybe consider it, but because he has struggled in this matchup, we're just not getting there at all. Again, not the best example, but I did want to toss that out to you guys. And then guys, just one of the most simple free ways you guys can go about researching is actually just looking at some of the other sports books that are out there. So for example, if you just look at some of the game totals that we have, you can kind of naturally know what you should be doing in terms of maybe wanting to target more over bets or more under bets. So let's look at the game totals. Are there any game totals that are like 9.5 runs? So sure, we do have some. And you also want to maybe favor the teams that are likely to win. Okay, so looking at it, guys, we got Baltimore Orioles, 9.5 runs. They are 1.5 run favorites in this game, although plus 144. So not all too likely for that to happen, but still, that is a good spot to get to for some over bets for some of the hitters, okay, because there's a lot of runs in that game, and maybe you could potentially run out a game stack in that game. Now, the issue that occurs when you do that on PrizePicks, for example, is that when you stack more than 2 players per team, and especially more than 2 per game, the payout does get a little bit reduced. So that is kind of an issue that occurs. The way you can go about kind of manipulating the PrizePicks board, or maybe underdog board as well, is one, bet on both sides there. So if you like a game and you want to stack a game, you could take one player from Baltimore, for example, there, and then one player from Tampa Bay on PrizePicks, put those two together in a 2-slip bet. You guys could actually do the exact same thing on underdog, but have it be 2 separate players as well. So the point of the bet would be that you're trying to stack a bet on PrizePicks and underdog because it's a high game total that you want to target. And actually, here's a better example. We got 2 games later on tonight that are, as I'm recording this video, 11 runs and 10 runs. So naturally speaking, we want to be chasing more overs for both of those games. So that'd be a better way of going about doing that. Now, on the flip side of that, if we scroll up a little bit, we have 2 games that are only 7 runs. And so obviously for those, we would naturally want to be chasing more of the unders. Now, again, not the ideal day to kind of go about using that strategy for today's slate based off how it is, because all the lines are already adjusted for the high game totals. But let's just kind of go through it again. So we have New York. New York is actually in a 9-run total. And we have 2 players here that are popping up as New York players we're being told to bet the over, that also kind of meet the threshold of players that, kind of based off of the PrizePicks prop bets, where they are Goblin prop bets, based off of their hits, high likely to be pushes. So maybe we could stack Anthony Volpe for his over fantasy score. And then we could also do LeMahieu here as well for over 3 for his fantasy score as well. Those are 2 prop bets that we could end up stacking together. And as long as we do not use another bet from that game, the payout's not going to be too reduced. So not a terrible way to go about doing that. And then again, just another kind of small hack that you could attach to that as well is sometimes we'll get some spots where we can be on a pitcher and a hitter, where we're betting on the hitter for over their fantasy score and the pitcher for under their fantasy score, or vice versa. One thing that I think is a useful thing to look at is kind of just the outs that they're likely to record in that game per Vegas odds that we are getting. So are they going to get a quality start or not? Are they going to pitch well or not? To me, this data point kind of tells us that the most, because obviously if you're pitching deeper into a game, you're pitching well, your pitch count's not that high. So if we can look at a player that maybe we want to bet on is over, maybe we see that a pitcher has a good matchup against a team. Again, going back to this kind of sheet, maybe we do have a hot bat or pitcher matchup. Okay, or vice versa. Maybe we look at Dean Kramer, maybe he struggles, and maybe his out total is lower. We could then maybe find some hitting prop bets that we want to be betting on the over. So here's like a decent example of what I mean. So we got the Reds pitcher who's only projected to get 14.5 pitching outs. Now he's probably likely to get to 15 is what we're, round up from -135. And again, we're just using DraftKings, only one book, so maybe some other sites have it slightly different, but whatever. For the sake of this example, he's probably not going to get to a quality start. He is likely to probably struggle in this game. So if we're being told to bet on some overs for some of the batters in this game he's the pitcher for Minnesota, whatever. But if we're being told to bet on some of the overs for maybe Cincinnati, we're going to be more inclined to do that because we know that the pitcher is likely to struggle in this game as well. Now, obviously, you could look at some other stuff, like just simply go to ESPN, look at which pitchers have the highest ERA, which pitchers are maybe struggling as well recently. We can look at all that stuff. I think that's fine. And kind of another way of going about doing it, this is something that I typically like to do for NBA. You can also do it for MLB, is actually go to one of the DFS sites, whether it's Yahoo, FanDuel, or DraftKings. It has the games listed out pretty well. It'll tell you guys kind of who's expected to start as well based off of this. It's broken down by position as well, so you can just kind of go through. All right, we got Will Warren going against the Angels here. We see Will Warren 4-3, has a decently high IRA of 4.86. Look at his game log. Has he struggled recently? Has he not struggled recently? What is his pitch count? It does break it down in a very nice and easy to read way. And obviously you can just make more decisions based off of that. So when you're kind of going through your research and looking at that, it does have the game log as well. So I don't think he's pitched against LA this year, but you can control search and see if he has a game against them as well. Obviously he doesn't. Let me also look at something like Kyle Hendricks. What we're going to notice here is that, all right, we see why the game total is pretty high in this game. Okay, 5.2 is going to be his ERA, 4-6 on the year. We see he hasn't really gotten a high pitch count. His fantasy score has been pretty low. His game log recently is pretty poor as well, giving up a lot of runs there as well. So again, kind of going back to some of those PrizePicks prop bets that we're being told to bet on, we're going to be more inclined to get to those probably. And then maybe you could also look at getting to some of his unders as well. But that's something you would maybe want to do more for more traditional sports books. But that's going to do it, guys. Don't want this video to get too long. There's obviously a lot of other avenues you can go down in terms of research and whatnot. But I did want to call it that hack that we have on PrizePicks right now. It's a pretty easy spot to get to. A good way of knowing when we're getting an edge on PrizePicks though as well, just for hitting fantasy score, is compare it against Underdog as well. The scoring is not an exact one-for-one swap. They value steals and balls slightly in a different way, but when you combine them all together, the point total is basically the same. And so as long as you're not targeting a player that has a lot of steals or gets a lot of balls or bases on balls, then it's pretty much a one-for-one swap. So that's something you can do there as well, is kind of compare the PrizePicks line for his hitting fantasy score or pitching fantasy score. Compare that with PrizePicks and Underdog. You can also use that as well. But with those ones that we were talking about earlier, where they're like a 3 for a fantasy score, where it's heavily likely to be a push, Underdog is not giving us those lines because it would be a bad line. And so until PrizePicks corrects that, take advantage of that. And again, I do really like looking at that BVP per RotoWire. I do enjoy their site. That is a free tool. They have some ones you can pay for as well. If you guys want to do that, you can. But it's a nice, just useful tool that I like to use. Again, me using the 9-to-5 cheat sheet, I'll just look at that as well. If we get a player that is in a very good matchup, a matchup that he's dominating against, and we're being told to bet the over, I'm much more inclined to do that there as well. But that's going to do it for this video. I appreciate you guys being here. Make sure to give a like and subscribe to the channel. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this coverage. Hopefully it all made sense. Thanks for watching. Good luck. And as always, let's keep cashing.